All right, Texas finds a way to win at home against Kansas State 33-30 in overtime. Welcome to the Horns 24/7 post-game analysis. Let's go ahead and break down this game. The first thing that I'll say is I don't have to tell a lot of Longhorn fans this, but they should be very happy that Texas walked out of this game with a victory in the first place. Now let's go into why. Number one, they gave up 3 touchdowns in under 4 minutes at the end of the third quarter going into the fourth. Swings like that just can't happen because the momentum completely gets taken away from your side. And Kansas State now all of a sudden gets to hang around in the game. The Longhorns were up by as much as 20 in this ball game, and that 20-point swing ended up tying the game for Kansas State. They lost the turnover battle in this one 3-2. They had 2 interceptions from Malik Murphy, and then Jonathan Brooks gave up a fumble. Believe that might have been his first of the season. Don't quote me on that, but believe it was. Once Kansas State figured out that they could throw the ball around on this Texas defense, I think that game really changed. Will Howard finished the game 26 of 42 for 327 yards, 4 touchdowns, and just 1 interception that was only picked off really because I'm not going to say lucky, but the ball floated out of a receiver's hands and Michael Taft was right there waiting for it. Texas still seems to be playing way too soft in coverage. That was something that Joel Klatt even mentioned on the broadcast. Seemed like the Texas corners were playing a little too far off the line, and that allowed Kansas State to get easy chunk yardage on early downs and even on third down. And we'll talk about how they struggled a little bit with that later. But nonetheless, they took advantage of that on those early downs, not third downs. Kansas State had 11 plays of 15-plus yards through the air, 0 on the ground. I think that speaks a lot both to how good Kansas State was throwing the ball on this Texas defense and then conversely, how good this Texas defense was against the run. And then Malik Murphy mightily struggled after those first couple of drives. He started off 11 of 15 with 175 yards and a touchdown. After that, he goes 8 of 22 for 73 yards and 2 picks. Seemed like his confidence just got away from him, and those throws that he was making at the start of the game were all of a sudden a little bit behind a receiver, too high for a receiver, or just out of whack completely. So we'll see if that continues or if he can sharpen up heading into this TCU game should Quinn Ewers not be healthy. We'll touch on that later on in the show as well. And last but not least, Texas, 2 of 15 on third down, and then they're 3 of 4 in the red zone. But only one of those scores resulted in a touchdown. The other 2 were field goals. So Texas needs to score touchdowns in the red zone. Now, the counterpoint of that is Texas has tried to get there, but they go for it on fourth down and end up coming short, which cost them 3 points as well. That was what happened when Steve Sarkisian could have elected to take a 20-0 lead earlier in the game. He instead elects to go for it on fourth down. They don't get it. The Longhorns end up only staying up 17-0. And that's how we got here. 3 points ultimately could have decided the game and not made this game go into overtime. But obviously, a lot of things can happen from there. So not too big of a speculation. Now, what are the positives to take away from this game if you're a Texas Longhorn fan? Number one, man, this defensive line is still really, really good. We talked all about how good Kansas State was running the ball coming into this game, and they looked not the part of it whatsoever. They carried the ball 29 times for just 33 yards. The longest run of the night from the Wildcats only gained 8 yards. That's good for 1.1 yards per carry. I believe that is the lowest total Texas has allowed all season by a mile and a half. They sacked Will Howard 3 times, get 8 tackles for loss, and hurried Howard 7 times. So he was under constant pressure, and ultimately that's what won them the game. T'Vondre Sweat getting into the backfield. Barron Sorrell got pressure on that fourth down play. But that is what ended up winning Texas this ball game, in my opinion. Jonathan Brooks and Cedric Baxter had a great day on the ground, 32 rushes for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. Combined, we knew that this game would probably end up falling on their hands on the offensive side of the ball. Jonathan Brooks, although a little banged up at times, played through it really well. C.J. Baxter looked healthy. He had that long touchdown run on 4th and short to give the Longhorns a bigger lead as well. So good running from Baxter, too, in this one. Bert Auburn was perfect on his field goals, 4 of 4. He hit from 32, 34, 42, and 49. So a good day for the Texas kicker. Now, after all that, again, Texas walks out of here with the win. What does their college football playoff resume look like? They're still obviously in the hunt for the Big 12 title race. So now looking even further than that, what does their resume look like? Well, they're 8-1 overall. They're 5-1 in the Big 12. They and Oklahoma State are tied for first place atop the conference. Their opponents' combined record, excluding the losses and or wins that they had or lost against Texas, is 49-23. That's a 68.1% winning percentage for Texas's opponents. That is first amongst all the other eligible college football playoff teams at the moment. So that's better than Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and all the other teams that are still in contention with one loss or less. Their AP top 25 wins, they've got 3 of them. They beat number 3 Alabama, now number 23 Kansas State, and number 24 Kansas. Their best win, obviously, was number 3 Alabama, 34-24. They just picked up a big win over LSU to keep themselves in the college football playoff race. So that Alabama win, Steve Sarkisian said earlier in the week that they have the best win in the country in that Week 2 victory against Alabama, and the Crimson Tide continue to play well. So it seems like he may have a point there, and I think the committee will keep that into consideration as they go forward. Obviously, a lot needs to happen for Texas to go to the playoff, not just them winning out, but they'll probably need some help from some of the other teams that are above them, like Oregon and Washington or Florida State. So we'll see how that trails out. But that's where Texas stands right now through 10 weeks of play, with the college football playoff rankings dropping on Tuesday. Now we'll take a look ahead at TCU, their next game this coming Saturday. The Horned Frogs, 4-5 overall. They're 2-4 in conference play, a year removed from their national championship appearance. They lost 35-28 to Texas Tech on Thursday. So that means this is going to be a rested Texas Christian University team on Saturday at home in Fort Worth. Chandler Morris was available in an emergency setting last week, but the staff wasn't comfortable playing him, so it was the freshman Josh Hoover at quarterback. So far this season, Hoover has thrown for 1,148 yards, 7 touchdowns, and also 7 interceptions. He's thrown a pick, at least one pick, in every single game that he has appeared in so far this season. The TCU defense, number 77 in total defense. They give up 384.9 yards of offense to the opposing team per game on average so far this season. And TCU 114th in the nation in turnover margin at -6 this season. An interesting note from the broadcast on Saturday from the Texas-Kansas State game, Steve Sarkisian's team's undefeated when they win the turnover battle. So that's going to be a big point for the Longhorns going into Saturday. So there's your look at the Horned Frogs this season. And now let's close out, as always, with questions that are left to be answered. Number 1, the biggest question so far: if Quinn Ewers cannot play on Saturday, I think number 1, that is the question. Will Quinn Ewers play on Saturday against TCU, or will it be maybe later in the season against Iowa State or Texas Tech? Number 2 would be, if Quinn Ewers doesn't go, what version of Malik Murphy do we get on Saturday if he is the starter? Do we get a confident Malik Murphy who is hitting the deep passes, who's hitting his receivers on target, or is his confidence a little shaken? And is he throwing behind guys? Is he missing passes that are open? What kind of version do we get of Malik Murphy? And I think the additional question, like I talked with Eric about on the instant reaction, would be, how long of a leash does he have if he struggles? Of course, the next person would be Arch Manning, but you also have to think, if you put Arch Manning in, you're going to worsen Malik Murphy's confidence, and you're putting a true freshman who's never played a snap of college football before in a road environment in. If he struggles, and Arch Manning has to come in probably either a tie game or a game that Texas is losing, and you're putting that whole thing on a true freshman's shoulders. So a lot to consider there at the quarterback position. Third question: can the Texas secondary tighten up against a TCU offense that is very pass heavy? They like to sling it around. Can the Longhorns finally tighten up and not allow this team to march downfield and score points on them like Kansas State was able to do through the air last week? Number 4, can the Longhorns win the turnover battle? It seemed like at first they were going to in this game. And then, of course, as I mentioned, that 20-point turnaround completely changes everything with the interception from Malik Murphy and the fumble from Jonathan Brooks. So can the Longhorns come out on top there and ultimately help themselves win a ball game? And last but certainly not least, will this finally be the game where we see 4 strong, complete quarters from this Texas team? I feel like that's what we've been waiting on all season. That first quarter against Kansas State, Texas looked phenomenal. They looked like, honestly, they were going to run away with the game, something that nobody was expecting. And then after that, it just kind of crumbled from underneath their feet as adjustments were made. So can Texas make counter adjustments to their opponents' counter adjustments and stay in front, keep their foot on opposing necks, and end up winning ball games in dominant fashion? That's going to do it for this episode of the Texas Longhorns post-game analysis. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you are the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew, I'm Tommy Yarsh. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.